Hello, hello, most beautiful stars. Hello, good day, good evening, good morning. Whenever you're catching this, welcome to Stars of the Morning Light. I am Courtney, the host, and today we are in Edgar Cayce's biography. Now, beloveds, there's a playlist in the description. We're kind of like inside of his 30s right now when he is in Selma, Alabama. Please utilize the Edgar Cayce playlist. I am usually either in his biography or in one of his resource materials. So, to bring everybody kind of back to where we are in Selma, he has gone through trials and tribulations all over the place, right, folks? Between the loss of their second child with him and Gertrude to Hugh Lynn having issues, his firstborn, to Gertrude healing from tuberculosis, to go even further back from his early years and being called a freak all the time, and all the very interesting accidents, instances of being around. Well, he was the kid that just always seemed to be in the most interesting spots. So please utilize the playlist below in the description to get caught up with us. Um, where we left off before, beloveds, was he's in Selma. This is um, the early 1910s. And I want to bring everybody's memories back to the part of the reason why I started the Edgar Cayce series is not just to talk about his resource materials and where are we now, 100 years later, was to bring the humanity, the life back to Edgar the Sleeping Prophet, that we tend to just look at his body of work opposed to he was a human too. He was definitely a human first, and Edgar struggled with being a human like all the rest of us. 100 years forward. So we are in right now 1913, 14, 15 in that mix currently in the biography. He has gone to Selma. His kid Hugh Lynn and Gertrude are still in Kentucky. They will eventually follow, right? He is trying to, as a lot of men at that time and throughout history, had to leave home to find work, establish themselves somewhere. And he was able to establish himself as a photographer in Selma, Alabama. So that is where we are, everyone. Good day, good evening, good morning. Glad you're here. The last little bit where we left off was he had done a reading that requested for an organ transplant done by the Mayo brothers. Folks, back then the Mayo brothers were not the Mayo Clinic that we know of today. That transplant actually didn't happen because no one had even heard. It was a organ transplant using animal organs. That had not truly happened and been perfected until decades after this reading. So oftentimes with Edgar's medical readings, it was very hard for them to find physicians that would actually even attempt it. It was very hard to have families agree to it because things were just unheard of. So even though Edgar would give from the Akashic amazing cures, amazing um, medical miracles, as we call them today, it was very difficult for people to get on board. And we can understand that. I mean, think of today's world as well. We have so much new in this 100 years later that it's hard for many of us to get on board. Same back then, especially with medical, especially. So, beloveds, And what's interesting is Casey's readings from that turn of the century have influenced what we do have medically today. So even if we don't get on board automatically, because us humans don't like change, we eventually will. And so that's nice to hold hope with that. If things look a little discouraging in the moment, never say never. So that is where we left off, beloveds. He is in his mid 30s. He is in Selma, Alabama. He is working. He has his photography studio at the um, in one building. Um, at the top of the building. So like think of a city where I think there was a grocery store underneath, like a corner store. And above he had the studio, he had another little room that he could do readings. He had then the dark room to, do what he needed to do. And I think there was somebody else renting a space as well. He's starting to do really, really well. Really well. Um, he's loving Selma. He's finally coming into his own. And in a person's 30s, they tend to kind of do that. They kind of because we have to. We have to go, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. I got to make it happen. We often have to do that for family, for resources, for whatnot. He is really coming into his own. And the church is there welcome him. He's able to be a deacon again. He's running Sunday school. I mean, his Sunday school is turning out tons of people because he understands that book a bit more so, let's say. Um, he's really enjoying himself. He's studying his art even more as far as photography. He took a picture of a very large group. I believe it was a church group or a men's group, like the lodge, something like that. That some of us, when we were young and photography was still, well, not on our phone, when we were taking a large picture, one person would stand on one side, and then by the time the second flash happened, they would run to the other side. He was learning these kind of techniques of like, how cool is that? We can get the same guy in the same picture because of how the frames are shot. He was practicing, he was learning, he was developing, and it's his art. He loves it. And so we're going to talk a bit about that today as far as his business and some very important connections that he's made. So settle in, everybody. I appreciate you being here. And this is recorded. I am not live. I will return to my live episode soon. Life has me doing physical. So while he's in Selma, a pretty wealthy family, the Delaney family, back in Kentucky, actually Lexington, Kentucky, reach out to him because they heard about Casey from another family, right? Um, for me, living here in the States and driving all of this, I tend to think about, wow, it is pretty far between Kentucky to Selma, Alabama. It's pretty far just in a car, on a train, what have you. So the amount of times that Edgar has always traveled back and forth, back home to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, which is very close to the Tennessee-Kentucky border. Um, I would say maybe it's east of St. Louis. It's kind of, or sorry, another way. So it's more Tennessee, but I will tell you, Selma, Alabama's pretty far down there, folks. So think of that. He travels back and forth quite a bit to see family, to help people with readings, to business, what have you. Um, lots of traveling, which Casey would always utilize that time for that self-reflection. For He was always in self-reflection, that beautiful Pisces. Self-reflection, alone time, all sorts of things. So I just want to point that out that for those who might not be um, fully aware of how big or how many miles that would be, that'd be quite, I mean, I would assume, hmm, about 500 miles or so, somewhere in there. Think of that, horse and buggy, train, what have you. And in this particular case, this is why I'm saying this, most of the time his readings could be done by postal mail. I do most of my readings by the phone. We do not need to be together. His were done mostly by mail. But in this particular case, it was decided that he actually go visit the family in Lexington, the Delaney family. And when he was setting this all up, like, okay, I have to travel, he was trying to find someone from Selma, someone, a physician in Alabama to travel with him. That didn't happen. Then he set it up with Blackburn in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Listen to playlist, please. Blackburn, the doctor, as many of you remember, he set it up with him, but then when he got the train into Bowling Green to go connect with Dr. Blackburn, he couldn't do it because some other emergency operation. So now Casey had to wire a message to the Delaney family and say, hey, I don't have anybody to conduct this reading. I don't have any physicians. I'm here. I'll be there in a few hours, taking another train. I'll be there in a few hours, but I don't have anyone. Well, so by the time Edgar gets to the Delaney house, they had got what was needed, a physician, somebody to conduct the reading, what have you. So this is where we're at, folks, because this is one of the, every reading's big. You know, he does the reading um, for the Butler family that really needed to take their father to the Mayo, what is now the Mayo Clinic. Didn't happen. This is all happening kind of in the same time frame. Uh, 1910 through 1920, right? This is all kind of happening in the same time frame. That was a huge reading. That was a huge reading because, whoa, organ transplants? What? Didn't happen, and unfortunately, the father died within like 6 months. This is another big reading. And not just because of the recovery, but because of the connections made. So I'm going to read a little bit for everyone. Amanda Frey Delaney, the wife of a wealthy owner of Kentucky Lumber Company, had been crippled in an automobile accident and was anxious to have Edgar visit her home. After they had arranged or exchanged letters, Edgar agreed to go to Lexington to conduct a reading. Prior to his departure, she asked Edgar to bring a physician with him to take down the suggestions and facilitate treatments. Unable to find a physician in Selma to accompany him to Lexington, Edgar wired John Blackburn in Bowling Green, who agreed to conduct the reading. However, when Edgar arrived by train in Bowling Green to meet Blackburn, the physician was unable to go due to an emergency operation he had to perform. Edgar sent a telegram to the Delaney family and went on to Lexington alone. He was relieved to learn when he arrived at the station that William Delaney, Amanda's husband, had arranged for the physician along with a stenographer and a person to conduct the reading. The Delaney family lived in an exclusive housing complex in Lexington called Hampton Court. A carriage, which was awaiting at the station, took Edgar to their large house. When Edgar arrived and was shown into the living room, Mrs. Delaney was wheeled in on a stretcher to meet him. The mere sight of her was evidence of her serious condition. Her body was so swollen that she could barely move her hands or feet. She could not feed herself or even comb her hair. Doctors described her condition as a severe case of arthritis that was a result of injuries she received nearly a decade before. Her skin was apparently sensitive to the degree that she could not bear to be touched by bed sheets. Oh, I'm sure we have all been sick or whatnot at some point when laying, e- even a bed sheet touching our body. Oh, hurts. Can you imagine that being a everyday circumstance situation that you're going through? Oh, this poor woman. Unable to move because of the pain, she had put on a considerable amount of weight. At only 5'5", she weighed 200 pounds or more. Edgar described her as being in the most pitiful condition of anyone he had ever seen. Mm. And this is why the Delaney's, with going back and forth with postal mail, with correspondence that way, getting this information beforehand, that's why Edgar was like, okay, I'll come up. I'll travel. I got the willingness to travel, and heck, maybe I can bop over and go visit my wife and son at the same time, right? I could not imagine sitting in the living room, being greeted into this big, beautiful house, right? Then sitting in a living room and seeing this unfortunate, beautiful woman being carried in, rolled in, I should say, rolled in by a stretcher. Oh, and this is why Edgar does what he does. This is how, by the time he gets to Selma, he has obtained enough, not full self-acceptance, but enough to continue to do the work that he's done. There's been a ton of self-reflection, a ton of awareness coming in that he trusts himself enough and loves himself enough and has accepted himself enough as the quote unquote freak he was always called, enough to do what needs to be done. So, as she's rolled in, and he has now met the folks that are involved, and the one who is going to conduct the reading. So, Edgar, he's still even though he can do a reading for himself, and he knows how to do that now without it really being conducted by someone else. When it is for someone, especially a patient like this, he still would highly prefer someone else conduct the reading. What that means is someone else is asking the questions to the Akashic field that is working through that beautiful body of form, that vessel of Edgar Cayce. The person for this reading was Dave Kahn. He was the neighbor, a young 21-year-old man from the Jewish family that lived next door to the Delaney's. Because all this had to happen real quick. We need somebody to conduct the reading, we need a physician, da da da. So they asked Dave next door. Dave, what a delightful human. What a delightful human Dave ends up being. So Dave does the reading, he takes it in, everybody's sitting there because a lot of the people in the room, this is their first time. And it is something to witness. Even though you don't see any fancy things. There's nothing fanciful to witness someone just answering questions. It is said this way. This is what Dave said when Edgar came out of the reading. And he said, how'd it go? And everybody's standing there, eyes just staring, because apparently Edgar, during the reading, stated everything that was going on with her body, with Amanda's body. Everything. From blood pressure to cellular level. I mean, everything. Everything, including the kitchen sink. This is a quote from Dave Kahn. You gave something for every square inch of her body. He's quoted saying that. Dave Kahn was dispatched with the descriptions to one of the Lexington's leading pharmacies to get them filled as prescribed. Edgar stayed with the Delaney family for the rest of the afternoon before returning home. It would be another 6 months before he would have a chance to make a return visit. So, what was stated? The whole kitchen sink, everything. But what was really talked about in this reading was how do we help this woman? Because she did have injuries. But what happened was when she was young, there was a horse and buggy accident that she had to jump off the carriage. And while jumping off, she hit her lower back on the steps. But because she's young, yeah, was it sore? Sure. But there was no reference to this is a permanent injury until years later, a car accident, okay, that triggered this reaction from the first event to the second event, triggered a reaction within that body that made that woman end up on a stretcher, not able to brush her hair, anything touch her. We've kind of all been there if we've had the flu really bad for like that 1 or 2 days. Think of that as a living experience. So, as Casey's doing the reading and giving everything to these people under the sun about this woman's body, whew, they start the treatment. They start the treatment. It would be another 6 months before he would have a chance to make a return visit, at which time he would give a follow-up reading. She was slowly getting well, though a strange rash had broke out all over her body. The follow-up reading said that an important ingredient, black sulfur, had been left out of the medicine. The lack of this mineral had caused the rash. About a month later, Edgar received a wire asking that he return to Lexington. He was quite moved by what he had saw when he arrived. The same woman who had once looked so helpless was sitting comfortably in a chair. She asked the nurse to loosen her hair and to give her a comb and brush. She had done her own hair, she told Edgar, and had also begun to feed herself for the first time in 3 years. Mm. She's quoted saying, "It had been 5 years since I had even attempted to raise my hands enough to do my own hair." Her feet and lower limbs seemed much better, and her swelling had decreased. 8 or 9 months later, she would invite Edgar to Lexington once again, this time to see her walk across the room at her own birthday party. Later, she was even driving her own car. Oh, isn't that amazing? So think of that. He took these opportunities to follow up with this beautiful woman and watching her shift and change and heal. At the same time, the Khans lived right next door. He began to visit with the Khan family. And Casey will never forget his first time that he's over there for dinner because it was his first time being inside of a Jewish home, which in my adult life, I am realizing not that many people have experienced, especially if it's maybe a Friday night dinner. Not too many people experience. I find that odd. We should all experience one another. But that's okay. Edgar got to. And what was interesting was at first, okay, the Khan family was like, I don't know. But then Dave, that all of them had this big discussion, and Dave kept citing the Torah, saying, "Look at what Solomon did. Look at what Saul did. Look at what Joseph did. Look at what all these people are doing." Edgar's not all that different, right? So, in Jewish mysticism, which is I think what Dave was really trying to go for, it is not as restricted as um, unallowed, I guess, non-permitted than in maybe other faiths. I mean, it is even said that at one point, you know, a family didn't follow up because the Roman Catholic Church forbidded it. The reason that they had to get Dave in the first place was because they couldn't find really anybody to conduct the reading because it was forbidden. Everything is forbidden. So they said, why not try next door? Dave and Casey end up developing a beautiful friendship. And Edgar actually develops a great relationship with the entire family. They owned a grocery business. So he's over there having dinner. Their oldest son, Leon, had epilepsy. And epilepsy, of course, is tricky even to this day. And Edgar did a reading for their oldest son. They did not follow through with what was suggested. Most likely because it was very hard to find any physician, any pharmacist to actually comply. Unfortunately, Leon did pass away. The second case, though, that Edgar was asked to read for them was for their daughter who had scarlet fever. Edgar gave the reading. He did his thing. They followed the cure to the T, and Eleanor survived, which was very hard. Scarlet fever, very hard back then. And Edgar would always use his wife as a testimony because she was able to beat tuberculosis. Now, Gertrude still, for many years, beloveds, still slept with her cider, charred barrel of hot cider by her bed to help clear out her lungs while she slept. Kind of like how we might use a CPAP or a humidifier of today. Um, Egger was using, a charred barrel and apple cider vinegar. I think we know what's going on there, all of you natural remedy holistic folks. So Gertrude had to still use that for many a years. But she didn't pass away like her brother did for tuberculosis, and how so many passed away from tuberculosis. I know in one of my past lives, tuberculosis. I know, right? So many people. So he used Gertrude's story often as a testimony. When it got to Eleanor and scarlet fever and she recovered, it was another testimony. Well, then the Khan family, as others were also figuring out, we can ask Edgar really about anything. We can ask what's going on with love life, business life, future life, Bible, aliens. They all started asking all sorts of questions because spiritualism was bringing in a lot of interesting questions. Well, then the Khan family asked about their grocery business. And in the reading, Edgar said, well, you guys need to maybe focus on large canned goods. Khan family, what? And in the reading, the Akashic through Edgar said, listen, schools are going to start feeding children, and schools are going to need canned goods in very large quantities and cans. We all know what we're talking about here. These huge cans that have, 2 or 3 pounds of corn in them, right? And not really heard of. I mean, did it exist? Yeah, but nobody was doing that really or selling things at that quality quantity. And then Kashik told the Khan family, that's what you need to focus on. You're going to make good money doing that. And it's going to support the shift in the school systems that are coming. What? So that's what they did. It also helped in other future things that were happening. Because the reading from the about the grocery store, Dave then went traveled to Chicago, got made a deal with some tin company of Chicago, some manufacturing of cans to create these huge ones to put the canned goods in and to start selling not only in the grocery stores but to big industrial schools, work places, all sorts of things, right? Well, Dave also got some more ratings, stating how the business was going to go be good, but Dave, you're going to do other business. And Dave, you're also going to be in a uniform. You're going to have to leave with honor and you will return with honor. And the family really, no one understood what that meant. And Edgar was trying to say, I'll read just a little part of it. Just a little part of it. In this reading, Edgar suggested that there would be a mighty change in the country and that the conditions developed. Dave Kahn would be forced to leave home. Kahn would find his life work in an area which he had not been trained. Furthermore, Casey said, Kahn's family would be very much adverse to the choices that he would make. Casey said that he would also have to leave the flock and go into uniform. The reading said that Khan would be in uniform for some time and that he would go in honor and return in honor. Initially, the reading seemed ridiculous, for none of the Khans had ever worn uniform. Dave didn't come from a family that raised policemen or firemen. The family's assumption was that Dave, being the eldest, would remain in Lexington and inherit the father's grocery business. Dave Kahn set the reading aside, unable to find time to comprehend that Casey had made the first of many references to the war that would send a generation of American boys to the battlefield of Europe. So I want to just point this out. Oftentimes in readings, I just got a lovely email from someone 2, 3 weeks ago thanking me. Oftentimes in readings, things might be said. a mighty change in the land. So many words that can be said that does not give the full scope. Edgar would know the scope, especially later when he was just doing readings on his own to connect and get the information out. Connect, get the information out. Oftentimes, what is said may not appear until down the road. So when you get a reading from an authentic Akashic messenger, put it aside if it doesn't make sense to you, and then go back to it. Go back to it. I got an email 2 or 3 weeks ago from a lovely person that reminded me, I still don't really remember it, that I gave a reading to them of June of 2024. It's October of 2025, right? Um, and they said that at the time, none of my reading made any sense to them, that she was thinking, this was a waste, and somebody that she respected, you know, sent her to me and was thinking, why, it was not really worth it. It was not really, she was not, she was not really worth it. Well, come to find out, everything that I spoke about started presenting itself what was last October. So like June of 2024, what I was speaking about didn't even really start showing signs of until October of 2024. And the whole year she was living through life, went back to the reading recently and went, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. She was telling me. So, beloveds, sometimes when we hear things, and I want to say this, not just if you get a personal reading from me, but any kind of readings, or if you're one of those folks out here that likes to listen to, predictions online, readers online, what have you. Take everything with a grain of salt because everybody delivers messages differently, but also know that sometimes dates, how it sounds in our head, even we're thinking, oh, this is current, does not necessarily mean so. So if you're listening to folks that are saying, oh, this is going to happen in this time, and this is going to happen in this time, and all things good, all things negative, all things come see, come saw, what have you. All things are going to happen at this juncture. Hmm, feel it out, because readings are fluid, same as our time, our space, our experiences. So feel it out. Take everything with a grain of salt, and then go back and review it. How accurate were things? How accurate were things? And I will also, at this moment, inform everyone that I will go back in November of 2025. I will go back to doing the monthly collective Akashic reading and zodiac readings. I didn't for September of 2025 and October of 2025 because I was inviting everyone to tell me what was going to happen. You tell me. You're the creator. You're creating. So you tell me what was going to happen. But I've decided I will go back to it this November. And if you ever want to, you can go back and listen to the yearly messages, the monthly messages. Might make more sense now. So he and Dave were creating a beautiful relationship, and Dave, I believe, also eventually went into like Wall Street. He went into, of course, the war, but he was the one who introduced later. So remember this. Later, he's the one who introduced Edgar to some really important people. So it's a beautiful relationship with the entire family, but especially Dave. They became pretty close. Around this same time as well. Edgar's been going back and forth to see his son and wife, Gertrude, who are still living in Hopkinsville. At this time, because he established himself enough in Selma, Alabama, with his photography studio, with just life there, support, right? He was accepted into the community. They moved there. Casey's dad also had already been there trying to help him with the studio. I will say Leslie, his father, horrible on the business side, but I guess it is reported that he became pretty decent at photography. I have a feeling he might have done the contracts of, taking school pictures, not anything too fanciful. Edgar, though, ooh, because of the Khan family's connections with the groceries, he had gotten contracts with Milton's baby food company to do the photography marketing for them. Hugh Lynn actually became the first like chubby little baby for them, or a young kid, right? He also got a contract with the railroad to take landscape photos and photos of the trains and whatnot for more marketing. So he's doing individual portraits. He's doing big contracts for marketing. Uh, and now his wife and son are with him. Lovely. Oh my goodness, lovely, right? And I have to say, I think they also, in Selma, his studio was above a store, but I think eventually it was, um, his studio was still there. They were living in an apartment above another store, and then they finally got to settle. Selma has a lot of things going on, and it's a great place. And I do want to state, um, my lovely friend Mary Jo, she has just recently, this past year, she's actually at her year anniversary of moving to Selma. And whenever, I don't know, I'm talking with others about Mary Jo, they all say, why'd she go to Selma? They give that look, Selma. Ugh. Selma, Alabama, amongst other small southern places, is going to be shifting and changing greatly. And she is there to be a forerunner. She's there to help that change. Um, it'll be great. I am going to visit her. We're actually in the works of me doing a presentation about Edgar there because they do still have um, different exhibits of Edgar's. They have one of his photography cameras that is heavy and huge and big, right? They have other setups and tribute stagger around. That building is still there where his his photography studio was above. So we're in communication and me doing a presentation down there. And of course, for you beloveds, I will do film for it. So Hugh, he's about four or so, three, four, five in the mix, young kid. He did not want to leave the hill. He did not want to leave home. He's, being a wild boy with his other wild cousin boys and, you know, causing ruckus and running around and just, I mean, he's having a good time. He's having a good time. And of course, he doesn't want to leave because he doesn't know any different. And he's a kid. He's so young. I think he moved down there when he was 3 or 4 years old to Selma to be with his dad. So of course he was nervous. He was scared. Him and Gertrude get down there. Gertrude, wow, I want to read you something because this is wonderful. This is wonderful. I'm going to read just a little bit. Because remember, Gertrude, his wife, what she went through. She kind of would go back and forth with supporting her husband because she knew the toll that it was taking on him. She also just wanted her husband. She wanted the human, the great, compassionate, beautiful, creative, gentle man that he was. It was now Gertrude who was spreading the news of Edgar's readings and who was his most outspoken defender and champion. Yes, Gertrude became his best cheerleader. That's great. Despite the fact that she still had to depend upon her apple brandy keg to help keep her lungs clear, and did, in fact, keep the keg near her bedside for the next 3 decades, she recognized that the living proof of the good that came from the readings, it saved her life. She's witnessed now what Edgar does saves lives. During her early days in Selma, she became his guide and mentor and began to share for the first time in the wonder and curiosity of his psychic work. Despite claims to the latter, she also began to conduct readings. In addition to being Edgar's chief photographic model, she began she became the studio's business manager, right on, and a job that involved making appointments, handling collections, keeping the books, doing the banking, and directing the efforts of their sole employee. Edgar was becoming an even better photographer, and for the first time he was learning how to comfortably juggle his obligations as a father, a photographer, and his life as a psychic. Oh, beloveds, it took some time. He and Gertrude, they went through their struggles. It took some time, but now she stands by his side. Now she's conducting readings. She's there running that business because why would he ever think his father should do that? Go back to the playlist, beloveds, if you don't know what that means. She's running the business. It's also, it just said, she's guiding him. She's mentoring him because that is what a stable, healthy couple is there to do. It is to love and support one another. Love and support one another. So, based out of trust, Edgar's going, Gertrude, what do I do? You know me best. What should I do here? You know me best. I mean, think of all the financial business mistakes Edgar was making when he was on his own, and Gertrude was like, you're an idiot. None of these people are good. And he was not listening to her. Now he's got his family, his son, his wife. They're sharing, they're communicating, they're running a business together. Things are wonderful to the point that Edgar gained some weight. Gertrude gained some weight. And back then, folks, that was a good thing because that means you were eating. Gertrude gained weight. That beloved little thing, she needed to. Life was good. He's in the church. They're in the church. Hugh Lynn is enjoying himself. He's playing down by the river. I'm not going to say there's not complications. It's the next time that we're in this biography. But things are being settled. They've come together as a true partnership in their marriage of supporting one another, listening to one another, not being in shame, not ignoring or avoiding the psychic life. It is lovely. At this time, though, as I'm going to leave you with two different stories, because Not everything's rainbows and roses, right? Not everything's perfect. This is why we're doing Edgar's biography, to remind everyone that even though he is the sleeping prophet, even though he did so much great work and service for humanity, he was human first. We all choose to be human, and it's our experiences here that we cherish the most, regardless if they're good, bad, indifferent, what have you. We cherish all of it. We do, even if we don't acknowledge it in this current. So, Hugh is about, I don't know, he's like 4 years old. And this will also kind of show the difference in 100 years ago compared to now. Hugh's like 4 years old, and he wants to play a trick on the nanny. So when his parents are sleeping, he gets up early, and the nanny is like making breakfast or whatever. He takes a bunch of his father's what is it? The black powder for film back then, like gunpowder. It was used in photography. Very dangerous stuff. Hugh's thinking he's gonna like make a little blow up a little thing behind the nanny. So this kid is blow this 4 year old's playing with explosives, definitely fire to light it. This kid's playing with stuff that probably shouldn't play. I beloveds, I don't know if too many 4 year olds today would even know what gunpowder is, right? And he was just like, let's play a trick. Oh, love it, right? Gotta love how times change. Well, he set out to play this trick of like, oh, I'm gonna blow this up behind the nanny and it's gonna be all funny, ha ha ha. Because he's also four, he doesn't know what he's doing. And he accidentally lights this powder and it blows up in his face and immediate screams, hollers. Edgar and Gertrude run out. They see that Hugh, his eyes were, yes, as he burnt all over, but it was mostly his eyes. And they were so afraid that he was going to lose sight. So they rush him to the doctor. And there were like two or three doctors looking at this kid going, yeah, we can do what we can. Here's the solution. But, he's probably lost his sight. Well, between all the madness of what happened that morning, Edgar and Gertrude weren't even thinking about doing a reading. But then when the doctors are like, yeah, not much we can do, Edgar went, wait a minute, this is what I do. This is what I do. I tell you what can be done, right? So Gertrude puts him in a trance before he goes in the trance. Everybody's already together. The Reverend, his, his community, individuals, right? That have heard about this in the early morning hours. They're already there. And they do a great amount of praying before the reading happened. And I want to remind people that that was customary. That was very customary for Edgar to want to do before big readings like this that are could be very involved. Pray, pray, pray with multiple people around. I want to read his own words here for a moment, folks. Reflecting back on how he felt at that moment, Edgar said that there was energy in the room like never before. He said it was like electricity. Mm. All is energy, all is frequency, all is energy. And to make sure that they are getting the right information, that they are talking to the source that they want to talk to and not talking to, I don't know, a trickster from the astral plane, right? Prayer, high vibes. Prayer, high vibes. That is what Edgar knew. High vibes. It's all about matching frequencies. So truly, the Akasha gave the resolve of really the mixture that uh the doctors were giving them for Hugh's eyes was good. They needed to add um some kind of tonics, like another kind of acid tonic to it though, like just a few little things off. But it was mostly about the recovery process. It's not always pharmaceuticals. It was the recovery. How often do you have to clean those bandages? How he has to lay in the dark. That kind of thing. And they stuck to a T. And Hugh was able to see. At the same time, just a few months later, how many of you remember that Edgar, as a young boy, had an accident while playing baseball? It is actually one of the accidents that kind of introduced to his family, especially to his grandmother and his mother, that something's going on with this boy. So let me refresh your memory. Edgar's had quite a few accidents to the head and the body. Not uncommon back when. I've also had tons of accidents. I am a believer that it's not just the pineal gland. There's other stuff that kind of might need to be activated in the brain. Um, and sometimes for some of us, it's through accidents. Now, I'm not saying have an accident. I'm not saying do anything like that because we live in such a new time frame. But myself, some other quite well-known psychic, especially maybe uh, some German ones, some Eastern European ones, they would agree. So that's in prior videos. Please utilize the playlist to refresh everybody's memory. He's playing baseball as a young boy. He's about 9 or so. And y'all, I don't even know how this really went down. It's like it was a fast pitch that I think hit him, fellas, where it counts, right? Where we don't want to ever have a man get hit. That fast pitch hit him right there. And as he's taking the swing, he gets hit. So it's like, oh. And then the bat also comes back and knocks him in the head. He falls to the ground and hits his head. So this poor kid. It was a hit so bad that he did lose one of his testicles. And something happened within the brain that this is one of the also the times that it was like a different entity was speaking and acting through him. Hmm. Because of whatever that brain injury was, which please utilize the playlist because there is a ton of information about that stuff. Well, now Edgar's in his mid 30s. So later in the same year that Hugh was going to play a trick and it literally backfired on him and they're worried about him losing his sight. Later in that same year, right around Edgar's birthday in March, Edgar had to do a reading on himself. So, while out shooting some photographies, sorry, when out shooting some photographs in the nearby town, he had had an attack of cramps and nausea. Dr. Gay diagnosed the case as a pancreatic, right? Like it's his appendix. But rather than operate, he treated Edgar with drugs. For a few days, his condition improved, and then he was able to go back to work. He decided, however, that for good measure, he would do a reading on himself. The reading stated, although the x-rays indicated that the condition was stable, In fact, an operation was in order and should be performed immediately. It further stated that the operation would be difficult since his appendix was twisted around his intestines. Ugh. The reading also suggested that at the same time that the operation was performed, surgeons treat a clot that would be found in the same area, a result from the improper healing of the wound to his testicle that he had suffered as a child. So, beloved Edgar's been living with a blood clot from, I think he was about 9 years old when that accident happened and he lost one of his testicles. Edgar Cayce went into the hospital that same night, and the doctors performed the operation the next morning. As predicted, the operation was a difficult one because his appendix was twisted around his intestines. In fact, doctors reported that they had never seen such a difficult case. Given the extreme difficulty they encountered, the doctors were not able to treat the clot, and that condition would periodically cause him trouble for the rest of his life. An operation so difficult that they couldn't even bother with that little secondary blood clot. Oh my goodness. All in the same year. Now imagine, though, beloveds, that if he did not stop and do a reading for himself, he was feeling better. They were saying, go back to work. We did an x-ray. You're fine. You're stable. Just for good measure. Edgar had enough confidence in himself now between helping his wife live from tuberculosis, saving his son's eyes, to countless others now, having that self-trust, that self-confidence, that self-acceptance and respect enough to say, wait a minute, I don't know, I should just do my own reading, get an opinion from my own source. If he had not done that, oh my goodness, I couldn't even imagine. I could not even imagine. So, with that being said, we're going to end there because the next one, we're going to be talking more about Hugh. Um, Not so easy to have a father who does what he does, right? Not always so easy on the family, children, partners, parents, all of it. Not so easy. Um, and we will be getting back into his source material on Earth changes. Cayce said so much about this time period that you and I are living in right now. He said so much, so much. With all that being said, the beautiful thing about this time period in Selma is not all the trials and tribulations. It is the coming into one's own, trusting himself enough, accepting himself enough. Because to tell you the truth, I don't know if Edgar actually ever fully accepted himself completely, ever fully trusted himself completely, ever trusted the readings completely. It's hard. It's very, very hard, especially if you're able to know and see things that are difficult to swallow. It's very, very hard. But it was enough. It was enough for him to step into his joy. He trusted and accepted himself enough to not only continue to do readings because he's saving lives, including his own and his family. He's loving his photography. That is his true love, the art. That's what he loved to do. And he was very, very good at it. Remember, he's winning awards until the world from Chicago papers started calling him a freak and California papers calling him a freak. He was winning photography awards. He's in the church, serving, having fun, going to the barbecues, having great revivals, doing what he wants to do there because he loved the community. He loved teaching the Bible. And I'm sure his Sunday school classes were very amazing to these people. He trusted and he accepted himself enough to also enjoy life, regardless of, yep, here's a trial, here's a tribulation, here's this, here's that, here's the distractions, here's the difficulties. Regardless of that, so much joy to be had. Once he said, this is me. I'm no longer going to hide. I'm no longer going to deny myself. I'm no longer going to deny helping others. It's a great time period in his life. So, beloveds, stay tuned to Stars of the Morning Light. Check out the Edgar Cayce playlist, please. There's a ton of information there. We've done his resource material from reincarnation to earth changes to so much to go through. Check that out and check out the new playlist of Matrix Living here at Stars of the Morning Light this Saturday, October 18th, 2025 at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a very special guest, my teacher, Master Lady Kira from I Am Kira As You Are YouTube. IamKira.net. She is a beloved teacher down in Ecuador at 12 Hummingbirds Retreat. Please, please hang out Saturday night at 9 p.m. and listen to her divine, beautiful self as we just discuss the living matrix and definitely the current matrix. So, beloveds, I'm Courtney. Big shout out to you, beautiful stars. Keep shining, keep flowing, keep loving, trusting, and accepting yourself to do in joy. Peace, everybody. Love you. Cheers.